So I am the president of the Fort Henry Guard Club, and the club supports the Guard. We do a lot of activities that will show an appreciation for the Guard. We assist with the awards program. We also do newsletters out to our members. Our members consist of former Fort Henry Guard and other members at the fort who used to work at the fort, other employees at the fort. And we offer an opportunity for everyone to get together and kind of go over old memories when we do our reunion years, and this year, of course, is one of our reunion years. There are a lot of students in the area that found employment here at Fort Henry, and the word was that it was a very good place to work. The pay was very good. It was a really nice summer job. I had a lot of friends who were part of the Guard, and I was looking for a summer job going into my first year at university. So I applied and started off in admissions and stores. So I worked a little bit selling tickets to the public, and I worked at the selling the merchandise that were in the stores. And at that point, everything was located in the Advanced Battery. So that's how I started, and I thought it was a really fun place to work, and I spent 3 years in those capacities admiring the Guard. I would attend, if we were finished our tickets in the evening, I'd scoot down to the fort and watch the show. And I always thought it was just an amazing performance. The music was fun to listen to. It really took you back in history. Being and working in the fort made you feel like you were a part of history. And the history was so rich. The museum rooms were fantastic. I'd wander through them, on breaks. The casemates were always cool, so you'd kind of wander through and get a really good idea of the history around the year 1867. Well, I always admired the Guard, and I always thought that there were a lot of positions in the Guard, and there were not so many positions for the domestic interpreters, but I love the idea of role playing, of having the public feel like they were back in history, and I watched that from a distance working in admissions in the stores, but I always envied it. I guess I looked at the camaraderie and the bonds that the Guard had, and it looked like such a really great group. And even in the stores and admissions, we were part of that group. After the day's work would be done, sometimes there would be a gathering at the point of Fort Henry where people would play guitar and we'd sing songs, and it was a really good social, cultural group to be a part of. But I did always admire the Guard, and in 1993 I had been promoted to administration, and my supervisor at the time, at the end of the season, we had our performance reviews, and she was speaking with me, and she just asked me the question, do you miss being outside with where the Guard and the people are? And I said, yeah, I do. Administration was nice, but it was in a closed building, and it really felt like I was missing out on the people that made the fort such a lively place. I think we spent more time making sure that we fit in than recognizing what we were doing was distinct and different. So we really, there wasn't a lot of thought about, wow, we're the first women in the Guard. I think the thought was, we are able to do exactly what the men are able to do, and by gosh, we're going to do it one way or the other. And so that's where the focus was. The focus was in learning the drill and learning what everyone was doing, and also, the reward, I think, of being able to go through and learn all the history of the fort in such detail, because the guidebooks were, fantastic for giving you the full explanation of what the fort was all about. And it was the interaction with the tourists, too, the visitors to the fort, that we were very, I think it was rewarding to be able to do that, and to know your stuff, and to be able to answer the questions, and be able to have such, an expertise in an area. Was nice. You started to really appreciate and understand what that felt like. There was a lot of life lessons. The management at the fort was fantastic. They felt this was the right way that things should progress, that we should have employment equity, that positions like this, because, you know, again, at that point in time, there were not a lot of summer student positions. I have the sense that there probably are more of those types of positions now with Parks and Recreation, with the City of Kingston. At that time, a lot of the summer jobs would have been, you know, either grocery store or movie theater or you know, sales, things like that. And this was a unique opportunity, and there was a lot of positions, and like I said, the pay was very good. And so I think, you know, the thought behind management is we need employment equity. We need to be able to offer these positions to not just males, but females as well. And that was a large part of the driving force. Policies were being implemented. And the Guard, as much as it had always been made up of males, and that wasn't necessarily on purpose. There had been many females who had applied to the Guard, but there was a very stringent physical requirements that had to be met. There were tryout weekends, and it seemed consistently that the females never made it, even though there were some really strong female candidates that could have joined the Guard. And so the thought was that they were going to assist the process along by implementing the employment equity. And they were looking for some females who would potentially join the Guard a bit early and provide a bit of guidance to those new female recruits that were going to be coming in the following year. So I was asked if I would be interested in that, and I jumped at it. I was like, yes, this is, you know, something that I've admired and I would love to do so greatly. And at the time I asked if there was just one person or if there could be more than one, because I had a friend in the tickets that I knew was also a great lover of the Guard, Kelly Blair Matuck. Kelly and I always, you know, shared our interest of the Guard, and it was something that I knew both of us would probably enjoy. And the answer was yes, absolutely. And we volunteered to come up to the fort through the winter that year, over the year 1992-93. And we started preparing to join the Guard. So we were fitted with uniforms, outfitted with uniforms and equipment. We got a chance to see how it fit, if there was any alterations. And one of the first things that we started to realize is that the sleeves of the jackets were a bit too long for us. So we started coming up with ways that we could adjust the uniform to work for us. So our show uniforms, we would put thread in the inside of our jackets and pull bunch the sleeves up slightly so that we could actually hit our palms on the butt of the rifle when we were doing rifle drill. It was an experience that we never thought we would be able to participate in. I never thought. I mean, there was many women candidates that had much more physical prowess than I had, and I thought if they can't do it, you know, the chances of me ever doing it. But when we got there, we gave it our all. We just integrated. We started that year, and there was the discussion tended to be around how to discipline female Guard, in the sense that the practices up to that point in time were, you know, if you could see the sergeants and the drill instructors would be yelling at the Guard if they failed to do something correct, which was historically accurate. I mean, they really, when you began your season as a Fort Henry Guard and you donned your uniform for the first time, it was a culture that you just entered, and that culture lasted the entire summer. What tends to happen is partway through the season, there's almost this building up of performance, and the performance increases, and all of a sudden you hit a plateau, and you just, no matter what you do, you can't get the performance out of the group, and so it starts to slide a bit. And there's always a struggle at that point in the season to, you know, how do you improve that drill? Do you become firmer with the Guard, or do you find different ways? And I think at that point we tried to offer different tactics that might work, but at the end of the day, the goal was treat us the same way. Whether it's a male Guard or a female Guard, treat us the same way. And I think that as that became common knowledge, that they understood that was our intention, that we didn't expect to be treated any differently, or that we didn't expect that anyone would go lighter on us or expect less of us, we wanted the same expectations because we felt that it was critical that the world-renowned Guard remain the world-renowned Guard. You know, that in no way, shape, or form should the performance be compromised in any way, shape, or form because we joined. And that went right through from appearance to conduct. So when we joined, we made every effort possible to blend in so that our gender wouldn't necessarily be identifiable from a certain distance. I mean, anyone who comes up close enough is going to be able to tell it's a female Guard, but we went to great measures to find distinct types of hair gel that would solidly hold your hair in place if it was longer underneath your hat. And we, you know, underneath the uniforms, the guys had t-shirts and running pants that whipped away the moisture as the day went on. And we found things that we could wear under our garments that would somewhat flatten our chests and really not allow people to understand that, you know, or to see right off the gate that they were dealing with a female Guard. But very quickly, your mind was taken to learning the drill. I mean, it was the same as probably any recruit that walked in there, which is you just didn't expect what was coming entirely. I mean, for 3 years I had watched the Guard perform, and I knew how hard they practiced, and I knew what they did, and I knew, you know, that you didn't do it right. There could be lapse, there could be all sorts of things that you'd have to do, but at the end of the day, the focus was always on doing the drill and doing it as correctly as possible and learning all the intricacies. And I didn't realize how much there was to the drill and how many commands and the challenges of being able to hear the drill yelled while you had earplugs in if you were about to fire your rifles. And it was just a constant learning curve. That whole summer was spent, you know, going from mastering one element and then having another element that you had to really figure out. So we went, and I started off in the infantry, so I was part of the drill squad, and we would learn drill, and then some days we would of course learn artillery drill, so we would be up on the wall firing the guns, and every time I thought I knew about the dangers involved, there'd be another one. I mean, you know, there was a lot of safety concerns that were taught and drilled into us about handling the gunpowder, which was again things that, you know, maybe didn't quite occur to me. I know that the exhaustion was something I wasn't prepared for. As a very physical job, plus with the heat and the wool uniforms, it was very exhausting. We'd go home in the evenings for the first, I don't know how many weeks, and just be overwhelmed with the fact that you had done a really good, hard physical day's labor, and it was exciting, and you got up the next day and you were happy to go back at it again. The friendships, you know, we learned how important friendship is, and the friendships that were formed by going through those experiences lasted. I'm still in touch with many of the people I was in the Guard with back then, and they're very good, solid friendships. They're true friendships. You know, people had your back. It's as much as it's not the military, it really is. You know, and you have that same sense of going into battle, going into your shows with the fact that someone's got your back covered, and you know, I don't know. I had experiences where we'd form square, and one of the steps in forming square was you had to take your bayonet off your rifle and put it into your bayonet, your scabbard. And if you missed it, you knew the guy behind you had it. You knew that if you were having difficulty, someone was going to reach out from behind you and put it in there. And that's the kind of stuff that you realize in life. We form relationships for that reason, you know. You have to have each other covered. It was good. Who the majority of the dissent came from would be community members who were historically minded. And it seemed to be people that would be associated with some of the historic organizations that, and former Guard, definitely. I think there was a sense that, you know, there's a certain amount of protectionism that happens with the Guard. We want to protect the quality that we feel we were able to accomplish during our time in the Guard. And there was a lot of former Guard who, well, I shouldn't say a lot. There, you know, on the whole, it's amazing how a few voices can make a loud noise. And that's really what it was. There were some former Guard that were felt that the quality would be compromised, or felt that historically, and I think there was a lot of arguments made from the historical perspective, that it just wasn't historical. There would not have been women in the British military in 1867, and to have it recreated by women was not right. And it was interesting that the responses that came back to that, I thought, were very measured and accurate, in the sense that there are so many things about the facility in which we perform our duties that are not historically accurate. Whether it be modern washrooms that are offered, whether it be the stores that are offered, whether it be the way that we acquire the gunpowder or where it comes from. There's aspects of it that are not going to be historically accurate, but the idea is that you're trying to give a representation as best possible. And that's where the divide came. Whether that representation could still be upheld with the greatest of quality by allowing an equal opportunity for employment for both men and women, or whether it was something that could only be exclusively men. And from a visitor standpoint, which I think is the greatest measure. I mean, the whole point of the Fort and the Guard is to be able to share the history with people and to bring them in and to preserve it, to allow us to have enough funds available to us to continue that on indefinitely, so that we don't forget about our history, and that we can share it with world visitors, with Canadian visitors. And that didn't seem to be affected. In fact, my experience on many of the guided tours was so positive. They wanted to learn about history, and whether it was a man or a woman standing there in the uniform telling them about it wasn't important to them. Well, there are so many lessons, and just working at Fort Henry, there's lessons from the Guard and there's lessons from working at Fort Henry. Fort Henry as an employer was fantastic for explaining to the employees that it had the concepts behind tourism and the business that evolves around that. And so there was a lot of lessons learned about if a visitor has a negative experience, they will tell 10 people. If they have a positive experience, they might tell 2 or 3. And so you really have to work hard at making sure that somebody has a very positive experience and that they want to share it and they want to come back with their kids and their grandkids down the road. And so those lessons were very important, I think, because, again, that applies to life in general. It's important that we have positive experiences, right? The negative way out too greatly, you've got to really build on the positive. To the Guard itself, I mean, oh my goodness, from learning the chain of command, learning how important that is. In so many businesses, the same principles apply. And it's important to recognize that chain for things to work efficiently. It was important to understand that friendships are very important. Those relationships are what save you. If you have a rear rank and a front rank person who are paired together and you get on along well, you're going to benefit the team accordingly. If you don't, you're going to have a lot of difficulty, and it's going to be a weak spot. So you learn that those relationships are important. You learn self-discipline, just a huge amount of self-discipline to be able to take the time and the initiative to go into the pattern magazine and drill extra so that you can make sure that the whole team as a whole looks really well and does well. To recognize if you have a weakness and to talk to somebody about it. To be able to perform under so many different conditions and to be able to do what we did, you learn that you can do anything. If you really put your mind to it and you put the extra time and the effort into things, you can accomplish great things, which in my case meant that in 1994, the Guard visited Washington, D.C. and performed with the United States Marine Corps on the grass parade square at 8th and I Barracks. But they've never let the quality drop. They've always put on just fantastic performances. The fact that the Marine Corps continues to enjoy coming up here, and the fact that we continue to awe them every time they come up. You've got senior officers in the Marine Corps that are telling us how wonderful, we do, what wonderful shows we do, and the quality of our drill. Just recently I had the chance to talk to one of the retired brigadier generals from the Canadian military. We were watching a performance together, and the compliments were flowing as to how good the Guard has done and how good the Guard does do, considering their university and college students with no formal military training. So I think that in my mind there's been no compromise in quality. The Guard will forever do a wonderful job, the same way that Ronald Way expected it to happen 80 years ago, and I think he'd be proud. I really do.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I would say that working at Fort Henry is a memorable experience. It is a experience you will not forget, as good, bad, and otherwise sometimes, but it is, on the whole, it is such a positive experience and really does teach many life lessons, really does equip you with skills to deal with situations that you'll encounter in the future, whether it's self-discipline, whether it's learning how to deal with difficult situations, to think outside the box, to be very positive with attitude. It teaches a lot. It teaches relationships and bonds, and those are things that will live with many Guard, I'm sure,